My name is Gary Turner. I'm a builder, former developer. I am building homes on several of the islands, and I do renovations. And for 25 years, I was a catastrophe adjuster and did catastrophe reconstruction. So I know quite a bit about catastrophe work and how it impacts the community.
Okay, so tell me about the current situation in general in Siesta Key. Maybe we'll start there.
Well, Siesta Key and that would be the other islands in the area, as well as islands, all the way to up the coast of the Gulf of Mexico that was affected by the hurricanes last season. Basically, there's situations where people have had substantial damage, and the cost to repair the damage is more than what the value of the house is. Typically, for example, I'm working with a client that they had a home that had an appraised value of $3 million. And most of the value was in the land and not the structure. And because the cost to rebuild the structure was so much, and the people wanted to continue to live in the house for the next 20 or 30 years, they decided to bulldoze the house and go up. Not all situations require that, and the rule that dictates whether or not you can just restore a home that's been flooded or is in a flood zone is the FEMA 50-50 rule. And basically what that rule says, that in the event that you want to do a renovation or addition to a structure that is in the flood zone, you're limited to only doing 50% of the value of the structure in improvements. And the value is set by, number one, the tax appraiser's office sets a value of the structure separate from the land, so you can find out what the value is there, and if the value is real low and you feel like it's drastically low, you can have an appraiser do a valuation, a FEMA valuation or appraisal of the structure. Most appraisers know how to do this appraisal. Not all of them are doing it, and that's probably because of licensing or training or whatever. But if you have an appraiser that can do the appraisal, and say the structure is appraised at $250,000, and you want to do $300,000 worth of improvements. And when I say it's appraised at, I mean by the tax appraiser. Oftentimes you can hire an appraiser to go out and appraise the structure, and they may very well set the value at $600,000, and because of the 50-50 rule, then you're allowed to do $300,000 worth of improvements.
So basically, if you have a significant amount of improvements that you want to make, and the appraiser's office does not have the value of your structure high enough, this is an alternative way to be able to basically invest more into your current structure to improve it.
Right. And that sometimes occurs because, say a family owns a property for 40 years and they homestead it. Because of the homesteading rules, then the tax appraiser's office is limited as to how much they can go up in valuation each year. And so that oftentimes the tax appraiser's office doesn't really reflect the true value of the structure because of the limitations put on them by law. And so, you oftentimes have structures that are drastically undervalued by the tax appraiser's office.
Yeah, that's really good information to know that. What do you think? Are there any other impacts that you think it'll have in those areas over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5+ years? And then is there any other information you think might be valuable to somebody watching?
Well, I think if you have had a dream of owning a home on an island or in any flood-prone area, and you see this as an opportunity, there's a lot of people that are selling these properties because they don't want to deal with the FEMA rules of restoring it, or they don't want to go through the process of rebuilding it. So they're selling them, and oftentimes they're selling them at deep discounts. And if you know the channels that you have to go through to accomplish what you want to do, then that should be a big part of the evaluation of the property and whether or not you would want to purchase it.
So essentially, as an investor, you may come across a property that may be unsalvageable or perceived as unsalvageable, but you could acquire the property, have a FEMA appraisal done, and potentially revalue the structure so that there's enough room to where 50% of that would allow you to really improve the property without having to tear it down and rebuild?
Correct.
Nice.
And I don't think that the typical investor I think people that are looking at this area or may not be aware of the 50-50 rule, and most likely if they are aware of the 50-50 rule, they don't know their way around it.
So it's really valuable to current owners and investors, right? Because you may be a current owner who thinks you have no option but to sell as is, when you could do this and potentially fix it up and then sell it or keep it. Would you say, or is there a side where it's more valuable?
No, both sides it would be valuable to anybody that is looking at either restoring or rebuilding a structure that's in one of the flood zones. Doesn't have to be an island. It could be on the mainland and just be in the flood zone AE or A. That's still going to fall under the 50-50 rule, the FEMA rule. So I think just knowing that it's out there is something that should be a moment of caution that you would want to take in buying a property that's in a flood zone, and then knowing how to address it would give people the power of making a good decision on a purchase or restoring their home and keeping it.
Is that 50-50 rule everywhere throughout Sarasota County?
FEMA is a federal program, so it's everywhere in the United States.
Everywhere that's in a flood zone?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. My name is Gary Turner. If you have any questions about the 50-50 rule, if you want to reach out to me, I'll be glad to discuss it with you. I'm a builder, former developer. I am building homes on several of the islands, and I do renovations, and for 25 years I was a catastrophe adjuster and did catastrophe reconstruction. So I know quite a bit about catastrophe work and how it impacts the community. And I just will say that although, a catastrophe sounds like a horrible thing for an area, after the catastrophe has been reconstructed, it brings tremendous value back to the area.
Makes sense.